Commissioner Greg Sankey, who's always kind enough to join us. You do such a good job. You go up and down this thing, don't you? I mean, this.
I do, and around actually too. Yeah. So I've made laps from one end to the other. There's a little bit more space, and then everything's here. It's a little bit easier to move people around. So it's a neat setup, and you guys have a great view.
This is fantastic.
Turn around and see what's happening on the big stage.
We have loved this, Greg. It seems like the world of college football never stops changing. Is it exhausting? Is it exhilarating? Because we can ask you 10,000 questions about the portal and the playoff and going to 16 and all. But from your standpoint, do you wish it would slow down and there'd be more stability?
Day 3 of media days, it's exhausting, so I'll give you that. It's both at the same time. I've read some historical books. In fact, the quote that we've shared with ADs is, the reality of football is it's an ever-changing game. I mean, that's just over time. And the benefit of having studied a bit of sports history years ago and continuing to have an interest, one of the heartwarming realities is some of these problems have lingered for 100 years. Sometimes they're shoved under the rug. Sometimes they pop out into the dustpan, if you will, but nobody else has figured it out. So it's not like we're running around as, the village idiots because we can't get this done. These have been hard issues.
But you're also a guy.
Well, hang on. Let me turn you on. Sorry, Matty.
I love the fact
Matt couldn't talk.
He loves that I can't talk.
Tell me which dial that was.
We shut down Matt.
He loves that I can't talk to
him. It's a yellow dial. I'm just not
yes,
sure
it is. Matt's on yellow. Now you know.
You can't avoid me, man. Whether you like it or not, you can't. You are also a big history. You're a history buff. You're a music buff. There are people in history, there are people in music that do different things, that go out on the edge, that try to change and push the envelope. You've now become that guy in college sports. Are you comfortable in that role?
That's reality to a certain extent. It's interesting, like you take the college football playoff. I can tell you who came up with the 12-team model. That was me when you're trying to balance, like on the head of the pin, a bunch of different motivations and objectives, and it worked really well for what it was intended to do.
Until the Alliance came in and scuttled it for a year.
Well, that was real. Yeah, I mean, that was introduced in June. Right. We expanded in July, and then you had a year and a half sitting in our hands. We're paying the price for that. That's why you don't do those things.
Right.
That's why you don't just become obstinate to be obstinate. You have to work through problems, and I would just submit that, there may be disagreements now, but I think what's been healthy is the ability to talk through different perspectives, and that can make ideas better. There are plenty of innovators. I think you have to give Brett credit for some of the things he's done with the Big 12, the 4 time zone thing. I'm not that innovative. They've got that in the Big 10 as well. I think that maybe that's a great communication point. It's also a bit of a challenge. What I want us to do is to set a standard of excellence and operate to that, and that's in everything that we do. And that causes people to follow, and that creates innovative opportunities.
Greg, as the subject everyone's talking about is the new playoff, and if we get to 16, by now everybody knows the 4-4, 2-2-1-3 versus the 5-11. I don't need to go over that because our listeners all know it. Do you have a preference? It seems like your coaches prefer the 5-11 now, which maybe they didn't before. The Big Ten prefers the other. What do you prefer?
Well, let me break it down just a little bit more specifically. So, as I said, I was involved in the design of the 12-team model. That included an allocation of, at the time, half the field for conference champions. The Pac-12 existed. When the Pac-12 changed, one of those was deleted, so now it's the 5 best conference champions. Whether it's 12 or 14 or 16, you're going to have those 5 conference champions. And so there's a bit of a notion about who's come up with 5 this, 5 that. That goes back to the original construct.
Okay.
So that 5 decision's been made. Now, how many more teams are going to be involved? Is it 5 plus 7? Is it 5 plus 9 for 14? Is it 5 plus 11? When we left Destin, our membership said, we think growth to 16 is the right direction. I think that's challenging. So you're asking me personally. I think 12 works. I think last year showed you had 2 teams that had beaten the number 2 team in the country during the regular season, that some growth, 14 or 16, is justifiable. Now, the third component is how do you determine who fills those other spots? And that's where there's divergent opinions. And we've had interest in this automatic bid piece, but really look at it and say we could be sacrificing opportunities. Had we had a 16-team field last year, we would have had 6 participants. You're going to trade 6 for 4. And the answer is, well, we're going to have a play-in, but you're still left with 4, and you have to go through another SEC versus SEC game to access those 4. And that's where things really pivoted for our folks to say, let's look at 16, but let's clarify strength of schedule, let's clarify the selection process so that we understand how important rigor is and we can design schedules appropriately. And that relates to our 8 and 9 game idea as well.
That's the thing that getting lost, I think, in all of this is the 14-16 is not the issue. The issue for you is the strength of schedule. That's the problem, right? That's the key to going to 9 games as a conference. That's the key to expanding the playoff, right?
Yeah,
is
so
how the teams are ranked.
We had you may have done it as a media member, the mock selection process. Yeah. I'd never done it before. And in late April, we went through the process, and there were 4 screens, Team A, B, C, and D. And 2 of those screens were ours. One was Tennessee, and one was Alabama. Tennessee's in, so I didn't look a lot. I knew their schedule. I looked at Alabama, and the visual was striking. So Alabama played 8 of its games against teams 6-6 or better. So we'll call those winning records or better. And each of those games is highlighted in green. Now, if you beat Georgia, that's a dark green. That's a really good. If you played a 6-6 team and won, that's a light green. And if you lost, it kind of flips. They're being judged against a team from another conference that played only 4 of their games against 6-6 or better teams. Well, I can tell you, if you want to lose more games, play better teams, right? That's reality.
Right, that's right.
And so how are we going to evaluate that reality? How do you compare a 9-3 team? Yep, he's got a couple more losses versus an 11-1 team, but there's a completely different reality of their schedule. And it's not just wins and losses, because you can accumulate that through your schedule. It's the sophisticated analysis of who are you playing, who did they beat, what's the strength of their team. When we're not, basketball has the luxury of 14 non-conference games times 360 teams, and it all intersects. It's much easier than football where your sample size is smaller. That's why non-conference games are important, and that's why even within a conference, evaluating the rigor of that conference is important.
But how do you get there? That's the question.
Well, but
what are the metrics that you use?
So that's the question. I've seen an example of a strength of record analysis or enhanced strength of schedule. What I haven't seen is the homework. And how do you get there? What are the components? That's an important question.
Yeah, because
and by the way, I asked this. So here's the flaw. I don't know how much time we have.
No, you're good. You're good.
We had a strength of schedule presentation where if you played Team 1 and Team 130 in FBS, that averages out to 65.5. If you play Team 65 and 66 in strength of schedule, strength of
65.5,
it averages out to 65.5. You know what my problem is? Most years I don't have a team 65 or worse. Last year Mississippi State was below that. So if you didn't play Mississippi State, you had 8 games in conference that couldn't average out between that 1 and 130. Well, others do have that. So if you look at the trends, and I handed this out in Destin, our league has more top 50 teams year in, year out, year over year than anyone else. You then have some of our autonomy conferences whose average team may not start its best team into the 20s. You have Clemson, who's very high in the ACC over the last, I think it was 10-year analysis,
right.
And then it drops precipitously, and then it trails out. Our tail, not trails out, but our tail, our bottom team, is ending up in that 65 to 70. Then when you look at specific years, we'll end up at like 51, 52, depending on who's rating. These aren't my ratings.
Right.
It's Massey, it's ESPN, it's Sagarin, it's people that do this stuff. And there are going to be differences about that, but you start to accumulate the data, and you're like, holy smoke, something's different there, and how is that treated in its evaluation?
Yeah, and the synopsis of this is the 9-3 SEC team is usually better than the 11-1 team in the other conference. You don't want to say it, but I'll say it. That's really what the problem, right?
I'm contractually prohibited from taking that position,
okay.
But I'm not disagreeing.
Yes,
at all.
I mean that's the reality.
If you play better teams more often,
the
physicality, using that created term, and the over and over of intensity, you're going to have slips.
Yeah.
By comparison. And if you're playing teams with lesser records or not playing the top of a conference, that was true of a team selected on an at-large basis. Tennessee on strength of schedule in our league was towards the bottom. but they couldn't avoid Georgia. They couldn't avoid
That's
Alabama.
right.
They played a solid Vanderbilt team. They had others on their schedule. It's not like you can go in my league and just go hide and play the bottom 8.
Right.
That's not the way it works.
So it seems to me, and I might be wrong, it seems to me like the Big Ten is trying to bull you guys into the 4-1-2-3 or whatever.
I'm not going to pick on you. I thought that was an unfair characterization from the beginning. We ought to be able to generate ideas. And what I've said in response is, you know what, we have an interest in that idea. We're interested in that idea. We're not committed to that idea. And I think you have to establish the basis for why is it 4 and not 5? Why is it 4 and not 3? Why is it 2 for them and not 1?
Right.
Why is it 2 for them and not 3? You have to establish a clear
Sure,
rationale.
of course.
Otherwise, you're picking numbers, and that gets you in trouble. You also have to recognize the Big Ten will have times when if you were at 16, they would, based on historical information, have more than 4. So it's not just about us. And, you don't have the depth in the other conferences. So you look from Tennessee's championship, 98? So now we're at 27 years. I think we've had 5 different teams win national championships.
Right.
What's happened in other conferences by comparison? So Clemson and Florida State, right?
Michigan and Ohio State.
Michigan and Ohio State. Texas OU moved.
Texas,
Right.
right.
So I think I might be at
But
7.
you've commandeered
Right,
them
Maybe
now,
an old
Right,
number.
right.
So Alabama's won, LSU's won, Tennessee's won,
Florida.
Georgia's won, Auburn's won, Florida's won. I'm at 6.
You're at 6.
Texas has won.
Yeah.
You're at 8.
Half my league has won national championships in the last 27 years.
Right. That's right.
I mean, I say these things and people say, well, Sankey's just promoting his league. Okay, I'm promoting my league, but I'm not wrong.
Well, the Big Ten gets USC, so they got 3 now.
But
Okay?
it's an accurate number. So.
Yeah, no, I respect that. But there's
Right.
a depth here. It's like our baseball, right?
Yeah.
I thought our baseball season this year was almost exactly like our basketball season, our men's basketball, from like historic performance. And then we didn't perform. And then the naysayers are like, what did they do? Well, we actually did a lot when you go dig in and see
Right.
what we did head-to-head during non-conference play. And, what we play ourselves, and then we play games in the middle of the week, right?
Yeah.
That's what everybody does. We're not avoiding things. We played good, but we didn't perform when it mattered. So I don't know why I got on my baseball riff, but I went to an all-star game
But
last night.
that's why you did. The other issue I want to ask you about is not about play, and I appreciate your underscoring kind of where we are in the expansion of playoffs if we have that. The other thing is the College Sports Commission that is supposed to be a clearinghouse of sorts for NIL spending. Is that going to work? Do you?
Yeah,
do
it
you
certainly
think
can work.
it can?
The people involved in saying, you go back and find the tape from 2-3 years ago, the number of times we need guardrails around NIL. We need guardrails.
Yep,
around
that's
NIL.
right.
That's like the word. We need guardrails. We have guardrails.
Yeah.
Now we have a responsibility to make the guardrails work.
Yeah. Because I think, isn't that the big thing? I mean, the portal is, you're not putting that back in the bottle. It is what it is. I think you guys are going to land in a good place with the expansion from 12 if that happens. In the NIL, the hard one to get your
I
head
think
around?
we need to address the transfer issue,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
just portal.
That's the
Okay.
biggie.
I don't walk away from. I think we have a responsibility there because I think if one of our principles is tied to the education available on our campuses, the continuity of enrollment is an important piece of actually
Yeah.
being educated and graduating. That doesn't mean there are no transfers. We're not going back to the old days.
Right.
I also look at creating a legacy, being part of a community in that educational continuity. And that's being traded for a few pieces of silver, if I could go biblical on you. There's a balance in there. That doesn't mean you just go back to the way it was, but we have to have some common sense standards. We also have to allow teams to have rosters. And I think in football, we don't have a spring portal in the SEC. So if you don't go in January, you're going outside the conference. I think that's created stability. I think that's common sense to say, we want you to go through an academic year at a place. We want you to be part of spring practice preparation. You make your decisions. Hey, if you don't want to be there for spring, go in the portal. You can stay where you are. You could sit out the semester, whatever it is. The notion of having a spring-only portal, to me, just breeds discontent. And there's no way to make up for lost preparatory time in
Right.
June and July ahead of
Right.
August that's lost in February, March, April, and for some of us, the first week of May.
All right. We know you got to go. One more thing. We love it here in Atlanta. But quite frankly, Nashville is
Nashville's good.
Nashville's the place.
Where are we going next year? Do we know?
Nashville's
We don't
the
know.
place.
We don't
We
know.
don't know. We'll end up back in Nashville. I think Nashville was pleased with us. We were pleased with Nashville. We had a great Broadway concert
It's
on that.
Nashville for crying out loud.
I've been trying on that. That was a 10-year task. That was like a vision around our basketball tournament. And then we got lightning strikes. And had to pull the plug on that.
So we're going to Nashville next year is what you're saying.
I didn't say that. I said we're going to go back to Nashville.
At some point. Greg Sankey, the commissioner
I've
of the
played
SEC.
this game before.
I know you haven't. That's why I was working it.
Thank you for stopping by. We sure appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for the
Greg
conversation.
Greg.
Greg
Thank you.
Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, does